Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be proving skill issues in Apex Legends through gameplay analysis and breakdown. Shout out to you guys for providing the footage. Ina, thank you so much, as well as Bella number 2 from the community Discord. Both of you guys are in the Discord actually. So these clips actually have a theme in common where you lose a teammate early, but was it really your fault? Was it a skill issue? And that's where we're going to be an interesting thing. So in this clip, it's going to be very difficult. And remember, I'm going to go ahead and pause real quick here because actually, let's just keep it rolling. You'll notice that there's a lot of momentum, and I chose this moment specifically because the team, your kill leader, you have purples, your teammates are knocking, everything is just going fantastic, but then all of a sudden you lose that momentum and things go wrong. Now, when we do VOD review and analysis and trying to break down gameplay overall, remember that it's not a just one size fits all. It's not just me telling you this is what you should have done. We're going to look at multiple avenues and pathways on what you could have done. When you play a Battle Royale, it's very important to remember that there is multiple skill issues that you could have in terms of decision making, in terms of could you have won your fight, I mean, why did you lose your fight? Who was better in each scenario? And what could you have done to capitalize on each encounter? So we're going to answer that question, especially whenever you'll see in the clip when teammates go down, what can you do? So let's go ahead and skip ahead into the high point of this clip because they have momentum. They got a lot of loot and everything is going fantastic here. Now, as they're looting here, they do get a bit of a surprise. They're getting arc stars thrown back and they get a bit of a jump on them. But the plus side here is a significant amount of damage that occurs. And so we're going to pause and we're going to kind of rewind this a little bit. There's a few things that is a positive here is that there's significant damage, meaning your teammates can move forward. But the downside in terms of positioning, it would also be ideal to always have pathing that moves forward, especially with doing significant damage. And you do have resources. You have grenades, you have heals. I know you have a battery because I know you use it, but dropping especially kind of cuts you off from your team. And there's a few things that happen here. So we look here. So we pull out a grenade because that's going to be the utility that you've chosen in this encounter to keep pushing forward. But you are low on HP, so you definitely do need to bat. But you could also push with the Loba. So there's two avenues. Push right with the Loba and have the Loba be your tank, essentially. If you're playing, let's say, a massive multiplayer online game, hopefully your teammate pulls aggro. That is an option just to get them eliminated because by the health advantage, if we look at the numbers, 2 are cracked. One of you, they don't even know if you're actually cracked yet, so they don't have that information on you, and one of them only has done about 48 damage. So using utility doesn't necessarily have as much power here, but I definitely see the idea in play by throwing arc stars, and that is an option. Now, when we look here with the battery, this gives you the chance to kind of move forward, but you have to choose between one or the other, but you're kind of choosing to go a little bit in between. My biggest advice when it comes to making a decision is make a bold decision. Either you go full on with the Loba or you go full on in on the right. So we're seeing you kind of go full on the right, so we're going to rock with that decision here. Now, it looks like the Loba made a mistake with the Q, and it feels like, yeah, they pretty much got burned instead. So there's not really a skill issue per se quite yet. I would say it's more or less just small decision making that's making the biggest difference here, especially whenever you already won, but you're kind of letting him reset. Now here's another scenario where you did get a fantastic knock. Let's see what utility you have. You have your ultimate, which is great. You could put spikes at the door to slow them down. That is another option. So let's say you put the wall on the left, because we assume that somebody might be on the left and there might be another person on the right. We don't really have that answer. You're not getting shot from the right yet, from what I've seen. So therefore, we can infer that nobody has showcase presence, so left and right. Let's see what happens. But a wall is a great way here. And this is where, I guess every second matters if we kind of look at this, right? You have options. This is where you can definitely use your arcs to secure rather than earlier when you're throwing your arcs. I guess you have to ask, what was the intention of using the arcs? Right? So I'm kind of starting with this clip. If the intention is to get them to back up, well, you succeeded because they started running away. It might have been better if you just kind of ran in with them rather than using your utility because you burned through 2 arc stars here. But it did get them to back up. And to be honest, it did set you up for this other scenario. So I'm just pointing out pathways. I think the biggest takeaway is if you think critically through every situation and say, okay, what are the various options? Then at least you know the option to kind of go full force into. So you're here, you could arc, you can throw your tactical on the ground as you're moving forward. But we see kind of a move to the left, meaning you're not moving forward into that encounter. Let's see if we see it. So we know we can see somebody on the right. I think you see them. There's a bit of hesitation here, and this is where hesitation pretty much gets you eliminated. You were going full force into an idea, and now they're in the building, and you know there's one on the right, and now there's one on the left. Now keep in mind, remember I had mentioned you could have put that wall there to kind of separate. One, because it gives you the ability to res your teammate if you decide to go for trading reses as an option. You got to knock and say, okay, now we got the knock, let's reset the fight and go back to 0. Now the downside of going back to 0 is remember that the zone is closing and you're more likely to get third party. Something to consider, right? Options are all on the table, thinking things through critically and what you could have done. Time is always of the essence. I always lean on the side of clean up the encounter as fast as possible rather than delaying it. So now you have information. You know, one is still flush, which is really, really close. You know, your teammate's a little further behind. You know that the person is down and they have to still res. So technically you could go full force and go for the other person because they're still in the building, or you can go back and immediately just go for the res. I mean, just beeline it at this point. Like, just go put the wall down and go directly into the res and maybe spike up the door as an option so they have a harder time leaving that door, and that gives you that ability. So pathing way is not a bad thing here, but now every second matters. We spent probably about 2 seconds going this way. So beeline it. That's a fantastic. Okay, so that is a good thing that happened. We didn't know. I didn't know that that was there, so that's a positive, seeing that that armor swap is there. I think you kind of process that, but now you got to reset. This is great. So another thing you could do, you still have the wall. You can put the wall now up to buy yourself some space. Put it at a nice angle so it blocks off pretty much the doorway there. So you're right here, right across the center. Tactical's not a bad thing, and there's a full reset here. Now, because you're resetting, remember how I mentioned earlier, the most likely scenario that's going to happen is probably a third party. So we're gonna have to see if that actually does happen. I didn't fully review every single segment. I also wanted to kind of feel fresh for me. And so that's kind of the approach that we're taking. So let's see what happens. This is tricky. It's never fun when your teammates go down, but there is, I always say it's a skill issue because you've kind of won these fights. You've kind of proven that you're, okay, there's the third party. That's unfortunate. The wall does come down. And now whenever this happens, you're winning your fight, so you're doing significant damage. So this person's calling for a revive. They do revive. You know there's a team on the left. You know there's a team behind. Your safest bet is to kind of ping to the left. I noticed that there's no comms. I don't know if this is solo queuing. But even if you call them, hey, don't queue towards that area, yelling where you want somebody to be can always be helpful. And just throwing up communication, especially when you're trying to control where you want your teammates to go. Especially after you put down the wall, because now you're smack dab in the middle of two teams and you can't push one or the other, because you know the other team's going to push you and you know this other team's going to push you as well. Okay, so that sucks. So let's see the no. But now we're put into a pretty hard spot here. You're getting shot at the angle. Gibraltar goes down, or is putting bubble down. And now you're split. At this point, this encounter is pretty much over. Once the Loba, at some point you have to decide when to cut your losses and when to back up. Another strat that you could employ here essentially is once they go down, that you pretty much cut your losses and then go directly to your right, or I guess pretty much you can say north of you. Let's see what direction that is exactly. Yeah, go north and just say I'm gonna leave these teams, and hopefully both those teams engage one another. But pretty much staying here is just not going to win because you know the other team is pretty much behind you. So there, I always say look at the multiple avenues. There was a lot of options there available for you. I think the biggest problem is not playing all those options. And I wouldn't even say in terms of your aim, you cracked them, you got knocks, you even the playing field, which means at this point, there's not much you could have done. Go towards the area which you have more space rather than shoehorning yourself into a spot down here where you're pretty much just going to get stuck. Nice knock. This is the, I feel like once you're under pressure and stuck in these areas, it feels like you know more what to do when there's more space. It, of course, for everyone, always becomes a little bit less clear. So really solid. That's why I say when we look at the skill, you have a lot of skill. It's just a matter of you make up for the faults of, let's say, your teammates and the mistakes that overall that they're making. So in the next clip, what we're going to look at, we'll see how this does end up. We'll skip ahead just a few seconds here. You actually do pull quite a bit ahead. Now, so far you've reset. I know that your teammate does go in, But you can also calm to, because there's not much time that you have in zone here. Essentially, you could always just go for the res, right? You know that they're getting damaged, but you could also get your teammate back. Of course, all hindsight 2020, but moving in, you know zone 3 to 4 is going to pretty much hurt. And I don't see any comms going out, or even just simple things as saying, don't fight this, pull back, can go a really long way. I know it could be very overwhelming to say a few things, but when you need to control a situation, that would be my biggest tip and advice, just to get the comms rolling. Because at this point, you're going to get gated. They're going to be on the north side. I don't see this being a positive.
We have to push him. We have to push him. He's solo.
The zone, let's just see what happens. Yeah, and then zone 3 to 4, that's pretty much it, and you get eliminated. Especially when you know better in these scenarios. Trust your gut instinct rather than encounter comm, and don't hesitate to counter comm. Especially, I see this a lot with players. Trust your instinct and go on it. And even if it's wrong, then you know that for that instance it was wrong, and then correct it and simplify it. And think critically and say, what resources did you have? And know your legend's abilities inside and out. I'll use myself as an example here. When it comes to playing altar and learning altar, is like when you're learning a really new legend, you're outside of your comfort zone on your ability to win and succeed. So essentially what you need to do in that scenario instead is ask yourself the question, how can I always better use my utility, my resources, just like you're using the wall here to kind of move, but it makes it pretty tough to overall win. So I'm kind of curious if you won this round. Let's take a look. Okay, some awesome stuff did happen. You actually did get a res beacon in, and you have your teammate back. Now, I did skip ahead, so spoiler, they don't make this, but I wonder what caused them not to make it. And that's really lucky that you didn't get shoved here. I would say this is a bit of luck, the fact that you were able to get this res off with only 2 teams remaining. Let's take a look here. Got a crack, really solid. Now you can start blocking out doors to maintain pressure. Let's see if you're able to do that. Yeah, hold those doors, block them off. Block off as much as possible would also be my recommendation. Start blocking off doors, start throwing your tacticals down on the ground, and maintain space. Because it's free. I mean, why wouldn't you want to block off the door that is in front of you, essentially? Let's take a look what went wrong. I did end up spending a lot more time in this clip than I thought, so this is going to be a lot longer of a video. There you go. So you pretty much are blocking them in. So pretty solid there. Good start. You do have an angle over here to look for information. There's still 3 squads, but there's only 1 that you're kind of aware of. I'm sure a lot of people have this question, especially whenever you've aim trained a lot or put a lot of hours in the game and it just feels like stuff doesn't go your way. There's always something that you could have done to make the encounter really work. And hopefully as you're seeing, it's like, okay, what are the options and what do you have at your disposal and what can you do? And not one is right, okay? There's not necessarily a right or wrong. It just matters what you do together and what you actually act upon within a timely manner instead of hesitating. Hesitating and overthinking is... it gets everyone eliminated. I will admit to all of you guys, it's better to just do something and it be so blatantly wrong to the point where it can be pointed out easy rather than having things kind of just fluctuate. Unfortunately, Loba does get caught out again. Block off the door. Nice. And then go for the res. Got a nice soft reset there. Let's see what happens here. Gold res too. That's a huge dub. We do have wall available. We have no grenades. Good amount of damage. We're gonna have to review this and figure out what could have been done differently. I think even just looking at different spots, it always felt like you were getting caught out or surprised by your teammates. Because at this point, I can just assume the Loba's eliminated and that's pretty much it. Yep, they get pushed. So looking for information and looking for ways to push is really key. We've got the control of the doors, so use the ability of having control of those doors as a benefit and keep blocking them off and keep snagging them in. There's a lot of missed opportunities here with that. I mean, we do it with the first door here, but why not go around and just keep boxing them in while you can? You know, block that other door. You know, put a tactical in there and throw it across the way. You know they're there. Get this team out, and if you're not going to get them out, then maintain pressure and make sure they don't run up so you know exactly where everyone's at. The problem is that everyone starts looking at the same exact spot, and that becomes a bit of a problem. Like, block the other door up. Be able to heal up here, which is good. And clear an area. And just, I guess you could just stick together, right? Especially if you know the other team is going to start working their way in. It's always, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, it's always hindsight 2020, okay? Always, always. We can look at this and overanalyze everything, but simplify it. It just feels like there's not enough pressure that's going out. I know what the Lobe is trying to do, but they're kind of doing it on their own, and that's when they pretty much get caught out. And it becomes more reactionary rather than being in control of the situation. That's where I feel like there's no control of the situation, and everything is just kind of happening to you. So, Ina, my biggest feedback across the board and for everyone watching, be in control and have delivered actions, because it feels like they're more or less dancing around circles around you, despite you having the skill to overcome them in certain scenarios, but you're letting them beat you through sheer positioning and surprising you. So look for information, look where opponents are at, and try to box them in and push people in certain areas, especially if you're Catalyst and you're a control legend. That's kind of your job, is to box a team in, block off entrances, block off areas. And if you have the ability and you're an aggro legend, then you start to make pushes and find openings. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the next clip. Hopefully there was a whole lot of information there. Your team was really solid. You guys got 3rd place. Hopefully you watching this, you're able to learn a lot from it. So let's get on to the next clip. All right, so I chose this clip because right off the rip, whenever I saw it, I said, you know, this is a very similar situation. Your teammate goes in. This is more pubs rather than ranked. They go down. And I would say this is definitely more of a skill issue from what I saw briefly. Bit of overcorrection, and this could be solved just by comfort. It just tells me either your sense is too high or you're just not comfortable with more smooth aiming, and that comes with just time investment. I mean, that's an easy thing to fix, because even in this scenario, I think you get shot on the right, if I'm not mistaken, in this clip.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and even though you got shot on the right, you could have done enough damage and pressure to the person on the left to create an opening to the point where maybe you were able to duck a little bit sooner. So this was, you know, every clip is always a skill issue. You can always do a lot more. You don't have any grenades. You don't have a mag. And the surprise in this encounter just unfortunately wasn't really there, because your teammate already went down. They also didn't even heal. I'm not really sure what's that about. If you are in comms with them, tell them, you know, hey, to heal up. There's no reason to maintain as much pressure as they did. They got caught out. And pretty much start to break down where opponents are at, which I know you're asking. You're asking where they're at. So we look. We know one sees you, so this is information. So if one sees you, that means that you might need to reposition and back up, because they know exactly where you're at. And right now, they saw the other one come in, so it's a 3v2. That's why this person shoves out in the open. Which meaning, if you go a little bit more to the left and kind of bait them out, that is an option. You can hold your ground here and blast away. You do have your heal come up. You can pop your heal to your teammate. That was also an option, even if you kind of bait a little bit of time before your tactical. So being aware of your timing of your tactical can be important. Maybe you don't move up until you have your tactical. You can also pop a cell here. I don't know if you have one at your disposal, but you could also heal up to bait them back a little bit. You don't necessarily have to go full face plant in here. But I guess the only thing we can focus as well is really just skill issue in terms of aim. So remember, pay attention to your tactical. You could have used that if you just even waited. You almost had it for one more second. Could have thrown it at the Pathfinder's way and then maybe bought yourself a little time. Once they spotted you, bait back a little bit, because that person is also going to have to run up, and then you might be able to get some free shots and get a crack, and maybe the Pathfinder you can 2v1, and then you can use hopefully their body as a knock. Those are other options. So there's a lot of options here of what we could have done. I know it sucks having a teammate go down, or you could have just at that point just abandoned them straight up, just like leave them and say, hey, you went down, let's just go rotate. You had your conduit, so go craft. You know, I mean, I know it's pubs and that's not the most ideal situation, but if they're not going to give information, they're not going to talk to you, then you don't really know what's going to happen. And of course, I noticed you feel uncomfortable at ranged. So let's kind of talk about that. Let's go into MS Paint and kind of talk about some of that aiming a little bit that can be kind of workshop. Just playing the game, you'll get a lot more comfortable with it in general. So if we look at, let's say, MS Paint, and we draw, let's just say, I don't know, a dot here, a dot here, a dot here, a dot here. Your goal is to always make sure when you are aiming that you don't overcorrect like this, because then you have to go like that, which wastes time whenever you're aiming, and you're wasting bullets. If you shoot, you start blasting 1, 2, 3 bullets, and you go right here. Your ideal aim is to go boom, boom, with at least the smallest direction possible. So ideally, if you were pathing your aim, you say boom, boom, and then boom. But you don't want to overcorrect, which is what I saw in the clip. Whenever you're essentially flicking and then you kind of go back a little bit. Slow down your aim, breathe a little bit, especially in these scenarios, because if you start wiggling a little bit too much, that's a problem. You essentially always want to go from point A to point B to C, and then vice versa. And you want it to be as straight of a line as possible. It could even be straighter than what I'm doing. A straight line. And you can practice that. It's really important. Like, even if I curve a little bit there, that's wasting time. It's inefficient. So you always want it to just be simple. So that's in terms of what you can do. And you can even do it slowly if you want to. Even doing slowly, smoothness can be a little difficult. And you just kind of work on that over time. So that would be my tip in terms of your aim. And just play, play, play. And the more you play the game, you can predict the movement. You know whenever he drops down, it goes like this. And then he's going to go a little bit over to the right. Right? Instead of that movement isn't just a teleport, and I think maybe you're just getting a little overwhelmed thinking the reading that you had to like flick down because it's going to be a fast movement. But if we go back and we look at the clip right here,
Yeah.
let's go into slow motion it. Well, why don't we? You move up. A little bit of smoothness, like popcorn tracking, going in and just like blasting a target by moving around just a little bit. Over flick, overshoot. Slow down your aim. Just slow it down. Breathe. And even if you went slow, at least you know to pick up the pace a little later and what you need to do. And just keep a straight line as much as possible. As you start to speed it up, you start to get a little bit of the jaggies and stuff like that. So just focus on that. I think it'll go a long way. Focus on your tactical. Use your utility and get comfortable with your utility as much as possible, and that'll make a really big difference. Or like I said, just leave your teammate. There's a lot of options at your disposal. I know when people VOD review, the problem is hopefully that when you step away after this video, you say, now I know kind of what to look for. And I ask myself, what do I have available? How many batteries do I have? Do I have cells? This kind of, I asked the question when I was looking at the VOD. I was like, do you even have cells? And if you don't have cells, I would ask the question, why engage in this encounter? And if they're healed up and they're just shoving, why are you going in? You know, especially let's say that the race said they didn't have heals, just go loot real quick and then get what you need and then go right back in. It takes a few seconds. If you found this video helpful, again, we can do more of this. You know, less more on VOD reviews, more of a theme. I'm going to try looking for themes for you guys when I see them in clips. Teammates down, there's still so much you can do to win. Because at the end of the day, if you can't, skill issue. Skill issue at the end of the day, you can always fix it. You can always do better. We can always improve and get to that next level. So I appreciate you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and let me know if you enjoyed this, and we'll see you guys all in the next one.